Welcome back to another episode of Unsolicited Advice, where four of the brightest B2B marketing minds get together, pick a website, and give them some unsolicited advice. It's competitive consulting, and we're here to actually break down a website called mofo.com this week. And I'm joined, as I am every week, with my B2B brand of branding brothers, the Brotherhood of Branding. I don't know what to call you guys, but I got Brian Massey, who's joining us today, the conversion scientist. His book, if you should definitely check out, is called Your Customer Creation Equation, and it's worth a read if you're interested in actually converting some of those people that are coming to visit your website. We're also joined by Josh Miles, author of the wonderful book called Bold Brand, which is also all about branding for professional services. And finally, we're joined all the way from Europe by Todd Wheatland, the author of the Marketer's Guide to SlideShare. Sorry, Todd, but we're so glad you're joining us today. All right, so we're going to check out this week a website called mofo.com. And if you haven't checked it out, go check it out. It's safe if you're at work. Don't worry about it. Mofo.com is actually a law firm, and it's short for Morrison & Foster. And we actually were introduced to Morrison & Foster, or mofo.com, by Josh Miles. So Josh, you actually wrote about these guys in your book. Tell us, what's your first word this week on Morrison & Foster?
Thanks, Drew. In the world where professional services and especially law firms just love to tack on 5 more names to the name of their brand and just make a sign and a business card that gets longer and longer and longer, Mofo really does cut through the clutter, don't they?
They definitely do.
If a brand is a promise, with a name like Mofo, you know exactly what to expect out of your law firm. So my first word is great brand promise in the simplicity of the naming and the completely out-of-the-box approach to branding their firm.
Okay, all right, so the great brand promise is like 15 words. So it's brand promise, which is still 2 words, negative 10 points, but really good point. Thanks for bringing it up. All right, Brian, the conversion scientist, you're up next. What's your first word this week when you took a look at mofo.com?
Oh, Seth, my word is specifics. And generally when you come to a legal site, you hear a lot about how wonderful they are, the leader in this area, the sorts of services they offer. But Morrison leads with very specific support for the kind of business it is. Excuse me.
Can I get you some
for
water?
Instance, I sure could use some, yeah.
Specifics just get Brian all choked up.
I get all choked up about specifics and conversion. So the header on their site goes through and tells you a little bit about what their focus is. It's really about giving back to the community. It's about the foundations they have. They have a message here, jump starts for upstarts. So they say, okay, this is a company that's tech-oriented, that's a startup, that's community-oriented, instead of saying we are the leader in these areas and basically wee-weeing all over themselves. So I like this specific approach. It's a great way to show, not say, what your value proposition is.
I like it. I love it's the second time in Unsolicited Advice you brought up weeing all over themselves. So you get 10 extra points for that, and 10 more points for using one word like specifics instead of 2 like Josh. We seem to have lost Todd for a minute, so I'm going to go. I'll give you my my first word when I looked at mofo.com, and what I saw was differentiation. These guys don't look like or sound like any other legal website or law firm I've ever seen on the web in my experience. And what's great about that is it starts with the brand name. If you're at a business meeting and said, hey, check out my law firm, mofo.com, you've already differentiated yourself in a sea of sameness when it comes to legal. So I think it's a great brand promise. I think you're right, Josh. I think, Brian, you brought up a great point. It's definitely about the specifics and the way they have approached the market, and hopefully differentiating themselves from the brand name and the domain name on on their site. I think they've done a great job. All right, well, we're going to miss Todd, but you know what? I will tell you what Todd said before we lost Todd. And Todd said it's all about attitude. That was his first word. And attitude, he's right. They've got an attitude. They've got a real voice. And I think that's what Todd liked when he used the word attitude to describe his first word about Morrison and Foster. They really come across as having a personality to back up that brand promise and the specifics, and it does help differentiate them. So I would have given Todd 40 points. But since he's not here, he Doesn't get them. So
You must be present to win.
I think I could use those points because I'm in the negative if I'm keeping score at home correctly.
All right. Well, you get 10 extra points to get you back to at least 0, I think, so that you're closer to beating Todd if he ever shows up again. Wonderful new technology. Apparently, Google Hangouts doesn't work as well as it does in the United States, in Europe. All right, let's move on. Segment 2. You guys ready? It's time for our second challenge of the day in competitive consulting with unsolicited advice. And now I've only got 3 brothers. I lost one to some technology problems with Google Hangout, which is a bummer, but Todd will be back next time. And so we're going to actually move on to low-hanging fruit. And this is where I need everybody to actually come up with one simple thing they could do to actually make their website just a little bit better, to perform better, to be consumed better. And today we're going to start with Brian. Brian, you tell me what you think mofo.com could grasp hold of when it comes to some low-hanging fruit to deliver a better website.
Well, they do a good job with the main things that someone who's looking for legal services wants. They lead with the people, the lawyers that you could hire, the practices, the practice areas that they cover, so I can drill in and find that area or that person that I think I want to engage with first. However, there are some dead ends here, and dead ends is not a good way to treat your visitors. So when I come in and drill in on practices and perhaps choose litigation, commercial litigation, I get a page that describes what they do and talks about themselves. And if I read to the bottom, I say, wow, that sounds really good, but there's no call to action there. So somebody who's reading through a page like this is probably pretty engaged. Might be a good candidate for your practice. Give them something to do. Say, contact the people involved, contact one of our lawyers, or contact us, and we'll help you find the right person. They do have links on the right, which are not highlighted very well, that you can drill in and get an idea of which lawyers are working in this area, so they don't leave it completely open. But those people who are engaged, you have to make bold call to actions, highlight it, make it stand out on the page, and don't leave them hanging if they read all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, I think that was my experience exactly. We got to a bunch of dead ends on the website where I felt like I really wanted to learn more about the person who wrote the article or the person that practiced that. I think you're right. And it makes sense, being the conversion scientist, that you'd be looking for that point at which you can convert them to being a client. All right, Josh, you know these guys really well. You covered them in your book, Bold Brand. You tell me what you think their low-hanging fruit is. What could they do to make their website just a little bit better?
Well, Drew, I've been following these guys for at least a couple of years now, and I was a little bit surprised as I was kicking around this latest version of their website. First of all, they have toned down the Mofo thing a little bit. I think it used to be just big white type on a black screen that said, "This is Mofo." And if you're a total internet nerd and use the Wayback Machine, you can go back and see what that looks like. But in this most recent redesign, I was a little bit surprised that this is still not a responsive layout. Responsive, for all of you, is for sites that when you resize, depending on the browser size, or if you're on a mobile device or on your iPad, the content just moves and fits and responds to that width. So I was a little bit surprised they weren't doing responsive layout just yet. But on the flip side, they do have a really nice iPad app that's available in the iTunes store if you search for Mofo in the iTunes store. So thumbs up to them for the iPad app, but thumbs down for a non-responsive site.
Nice. All right. Well, I did not try mofo.com on my iPad, but you're right. In this day and age, for a very progressive law firm like mofo.com, it seems like they should be practicing some responsive design. So that's a good one. All right. Since Todd's not here, I'll give you his quick piece of advice. Essentially, Todd said something very similar to Brian, which is they have a lot of deep and really great hidden content, and it's at the end of a really long chain of events when you're navigating the website. And Todd's belief was they could really boil up some of this great insight from the people in their firm that's really compelling, and it proves what they know about the industries and their practices, and it's a perfect segue into that call to action that Brian was talking about. So Todd wanted them to boil up that hidden hidden content. So if Todd was here, I would have given him 100 points for great advice, but he's not, so he gets negative 1,000 points. I'll tell you what my low-hanging fruit was, and I'll tell you, I'm a big fan of podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I actually searched for a long time on the MoFo site and actually found some really interesting and deep content about very specific legal issues. Now, I'm not that interested in these, but there are tons of people out there that are. And there were even conference calls that were just recorded, and there was obviously great insight and advice from really smart people on those calls. And all I thought was, why aren't they distributing this content more freely? It's buried on your website. What if they just signed up for an iTunes account and started distributing it as a podcast? What if they signed up for Spreaker or a SoundCloud? It doesn't matter. And started actually distributing this content in a way that's more easy to consume, more easy to share, and actually is a part of a bigger, broader footprint. So that was my advice. So, all right, look, I think responsive design is interesting. I think the hidden content is cool. I even think my distributed broad footprint is interesting. But I'm going to give Brian, again, some extra points today for the dead end. Brian, it's hard to compete with you on the conversion side because everybody wants to know how to get more leads. So you always seem to be able to bring that home. So I'll give you 1,000 more points for that.
That's why everybody loves us.
Yeah, well, I'll have to take the Josh and I will have to take the softer side of the points token this day. All right, let's. You guys ready for segment 3, competitive advantage?
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. Segment 3, competitive advantage. All right, this is where we are challenged to go out onto the World Wide Web and find someone who's doing something better than mofo.com, and we're going to bring that to you right now. Let's start with Josh. Josh, you know these guys. It was in your book, Bold Brand. You tell me.
I like it.
You tell me what you think. Who out there is doing something better than mofo.com, and what could Mofo learn from it?
All right, I want you to take a look at Kennedy Vanderlaan. Now, this is actually a Dutch website. It's kvdl.nl. Now, these guys, AJ Hausman is a guy that I met at Content Marketing World in 2011, and he runs this marketing department at a law firm in the Netherlands, like a publishing department, and they are journalists at heart, and they're constantly finding pieces of content that they can use and that they can leverage to help market their firm. Lawyers produce just a ton of content, and often there's so much stuff that you can't use or can't publish or can't share, but he does a great job of helping them find those bits and pieces that are distributable and things that they can use, and get it down just to the most salient points and things that people will be interested in. Now, the knock against this is their site is originally mostly in Dutch, so I don't think this counts. So I think this is a trick question. I think in the U.S., mofo.com is one of the best law firm websites that there is.
Nice, very nice choice. All right, well, even though it's in Dutch, I'll give you 500 points for actually finding someone, because I'll tell you right now before we go to Brian that Todd, although he did extensive research, he actually went through the list of top 25 United States law firms, went to all of their websites, and guess what? His opinion was that mofo.com did it better than all of those guys. So Todd did the research, but couldn't find anyone that he thought Mofo could learn from. So I'm glad he did the research. But Brian, you're up. You're the conversion king. You're the conversion scientist, the Mr. Wizard of the web world. You tell me, who does it better than these guys?
Well, the site that I chose, I know does it better because I optimized their site.
Cheating.
So I'm looking at Lindsay Hart, Neil and Wiegler, at lindsayhart.com. I'm sure the link will be. To give you an idea, when I made earlier, is not just a button that says contact this person, but a complete contact form. So you can type your name, your phone number, your email, and any comments you have, and without leaving the page, convert to a prospect for this law firm. They do a great job on their practice areas pages. When you go to those and drill in on something, let's say commercial litigation again, they have links to the attorneys involved there on the right side where people would expect to look for them. That's going to bring you again to a page with that form on it. So these guys get the conversion game. They better after we spent so much time with them. And just to drive one more point home on their homepage. They wanted their people to be their value proposition. And so on their homepage, in their header area, they actually show you pictures of their attorneys. And this is working well for them. The company that put this together for them is Cinetac, the design firm. They're in Portland. And if you have a law firm or any sort of a firm and are looking for a site that converts, the folks there do a good job.
Nice. Well, all right. I'm going to give you my quick competitive advantage, and I'll tell you, I took a similar approach to Todd because I couldn't find anyone that I thought really could lend any value to what I think Mofo is doing, because they are doing a really good job, and I apologize for that. But I'll tell you what I did find. I actually started looking for content that people looking for legal services might be actually engaging with, and what I found was Bloomberg's Legal Podcast. Now, Bloomberg, the big media giant, has some really fantastic content that's about legal advice and legal insight for the non-legal person. These podcasts are great, and I think that someone like Mofo.com has the attitude, the expertise, and the practice, intelligence to actually create something that could compete with Bloomberg and that would actually garner a real audience. So building on their podcast ideas, I think they could actually come up with some really good legal advice and insight based on an audio format that could compete with a giant media company. So that was my low-hanging fruit, and I think it was good. But here's the problem.
That's brandscaping, man.
It is brandscaping. I don't think it was good enough. Josh, while you introduced us to Mofo.com, and I think it's a great case study, Todd isn't here, so he doesn't get any points today. Brian, you focused on conversion, and I think you had some great advice, and you have some experience in the legal enterprise. So I'll give you the winning 50,000 extra points today, and you're the winner of the Mofo.com episode of Unsolicited Advice. Nice work. So tune in next week. We'll hopefully Todd will be in a place with better internet access and not censored like China. So we should have him on. But Josh, thanks for coming. Brian, we always appreciate your conversion quality insights. And I'm happy to be hosting this week. Thanks so much for watching Unsolicited Advice, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.